Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, the only Flyers podcast. And we are not sitting in the comfort of our own homes. No, we are finally in the Snow the Goalie Studio here live at Wells Fargo Center. And you may be wondering to yourself, well, what does that mean about the Press Row show? You guys can't possibly be doing two shows in the course of the same day. Indeed, we are. Because we love and care about all of you that much. And honestly, I was just sick and tired of getting messages. Are you guys done doing regular podcasts and just doing the Press Row show? Let's throw it.
Here's your answer.
Well, let me. I will address that because I know a lot of people have asked, right? And part of this has been on me, not completely on me, but mostly on me. And the reason had been up until this point, and you guys know this, that I had a day job doing some marketing, right? And so we really couldn't do live shows during the day because it would conflict with my other job. I couldn't take time out of that job to do this because that would, be unfair to my other job. Well, I have something changing soon. I am, I'm still writing it on Pattison. I know that that's a new site, and I'm excited for it, and it's great. But the company that owns On Pattison also owns several other sites. And starting mid-December, I am the editor of PhillyDaily.com, which is a sister site of On Pattison. Stuff will still appear on Pattison. Flyers, Phillies coverage won't change, but I will also have a lot of stuff on Philly Daily. As part of that new job, which that will be the full-time job, I'm leaving the marketing job. As that being a full-time job, they are allowing me to do Snow the Goalie live during the daytime. So we don't have any issues any longer. We have stick taps. Stick taps for that. This will also allow me to head over to Voorhees, which I could not do during the day because of my other job. I can now go over to Voorhees and talk to people at practices during the day.
Oh, who could that be?
We'll have some stuff coming up on that soon. Anyway,
there have been questions though, and this is part of the beauty. Back in the days of signing the partnership with the Flyers, the thing had always been, well, creative control, and are you state propaganda? And yet here we are in Wells Fargo Center, and we are not state propaganda. And this isn't the Press Row show, which means that Bundy bombs live. Now, will they happen as often with us all in the same place, with Max running the board over there and with us not having the issue of tech?
I don't know if I can Bundy bomb as much. It just doesn't feel fucking right.
There it is! There it is! The first Bundy bomb here in the studio at Wells Fargo Center. Now, listen. We said for a long time that this was the Snow the Goalie Studio, just like the Snow the Goalie Sportsbook is out there. The organ soon might be sponsored by Snow the Goalie as well.
Michael the organist is going to lie. You're going to have him wear Snow the Goalie.
We're going to make him a contractor.
We're part of the Snow the Goalie universe.
That's right.
As we like to call it.
Yes, that's exactly right. Anyway, we're excited to do this. We're more than, I think, excited to do this in the studio, to do the show together. Doing it online is totally fine. Doing it from the comfort of our own homes is fine. But we really do enjoy what we get to do with the Press Row show. Now we get to do all of the fun stuff that usually goes with the podcast, which tends to be a little bit more of a deep dive. We're not on time constraints. We're not breaking down individual games as much.
Right.
And so
I do love that Jim Dronick is saying, love the vibe, no background noise. If he only knew that there is a lot of background noise going on. They're doing the sound test before the game. They're playing all the music and all the video out on the big board, which is literally just on the other side of the wall behind me. We hear it. You may not. So that's a good thing that you guys are not here.
It's a good thing, yeah. Yeah, because they can get it really blasting out there when they start doing their sound tests earlier in the day. So but we're glad to be up here. And this has actually kind of become a mini home for me because this is where I do Flyers pregame radio.
Yeah.
In the same seat. So now, but I wanted to tell them this is the Snow the Goalie Studio. They're just kind of leasing it off.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, right.
We're starting to turn a profit. Thank God it's finally.
Brian, who I love as well.
It's about time.
Yeah.
It's
about time.
Somebody's got to pull their weight around here, and that's us. We are here for it. Now, I am seeing questions out there. Are we live? Allison, our good friend Allison, who maintains all of the stats around the game predictions, asking, is this really live? It is. As a matter, what time is it right now? It is 4:53 p.m. Eastern. Is it Eastern Standard? Is it daylight?
No, we are now in EST.
Is it it's EST, so it's standard,
Eastern
right?
Standard
Yeah.
Time.
So we're in EST. So yes, we are live. This is happening live from the studio. And now,
Hear the horn?
Did Bundy have beans or no? That was the horn. Oh, there it is
horn
again. Oh no.
Beans.
There are questions going around about where's intern Andrew. Intern Andrew will be joining us for the Press Row Show. That is where he is not really contractually, but he is obligated to be there. He will be with us later tonight. Let's see. Andrew Fawcett checks in with the Russ alluded to Ant making an announcement. Congratulations, Ant.
Thank you.
That's a really, it's
great.
There is something, Bundy, you can probably speak to this a little bit. The benefit of somebody being in the locker room, around practices, around games. As a player, when somebody was more involved, when somebody was more present from the media, were you more likely to open up to that person, whether it was on or off the record, just to give some context, versus somebody who maybe flies in every once in a while, they pop into a post-game scrum?
Trust is something that's built in over time. And, if you have most times when a reporter goes to talk to a guy, and Anthony knows this, they think they're coming to get you for something. Or they're starting something, and that's not necessarily the case. Usually after a game, guys just want to get a game story, and to see what happened on the ice that night. But when you get approached by a reporter on an off day, that's usually where you kind of get your guard up a little bit.
Yep.
Okay, what's going on here? And why is he asking me that question? Where did that question come from out of the blue? Where you having a reporter come and go, hey, how do you think you've been playing lately? And you're thinking to yourself, well, what the hell is he asking me that for? And then you realize as you go on that the coach told him.
Yeah.
More often than not, that was the case.
That's the case. Where the coach is we don't like the way he's playing. Why don't you go find out how he thinks he's playing? Yeah. I hate that. Yeah. I hate that because, you can go up and down a lot. There's guys. I remember Bob Clark told me about my fifth year in the league. He said, you know what? You're getting to the point where you're going to probably have a rough night one every 5 nights. I was like, 1 out of every 5. That's 17 games a year. And you know what? That kind of made sense when you think about it, because you're thinking to yourself, you can't be perfect every night. And if you watch guys play, there are guys about 1 every 5 games that they're not having their best game, especially veterans for whatever reason. But I remember Clarkie said that, and this is well past the time. He'd already played a long career. So, but again, I was always, now I will say this. If I were a player today, I would be completely different with the media than I was when I played.
How so?
I stayed away from them. I just didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to be in the center of anything. I wanted only nice things written about me. I didn't want any kind of shit to deal with, where you had to and there are players that got affected by it, and they were the ones that had to speak to the media every single day. But I didn't. The way you get a guy and you trust him is for him when you built a rapport with a guy, and then you trust what he puts in the paper, whether it's right or wrong. I have no problem with someone taking a dig at a guy if you haven't been playing well. If it's 8 games and you haven't played well, everybody's going to notice, and so someone's going to start asking questions. But I didn't like when it wasn't warranted, and that's where you have to build in the trust with reporters. No, I don't like the guy that pops his head in every pop in, pop out after a game, and all he's trying to do is stir up shit, Tim Panaccio. There's always some angle, there's no story here. I used to do the locker room, right?
Yeah.
And so Panach would be in front of me because I had to hold the mic when I did NBC Sports when I was the between bench guy there, and I'd hold the mic and I'd get Panach would ask some question, right? And I would just look down on him what the hell kind of question is that?
Yeah, he would always be clearing his throat before he asked the question, too. That's how you knew you were in trouble. Now, the best place to interview Bundy was never in the locker room. It was at Vito's.
Yeah, I was always at my softest when I was in there having a meal. Do you know how many guys used to go in there for lunch?
Yes.
There'd be 8 of us, same guys, 8 guys every day. Now these little spoiled brats go in, they get their free food down in the meal room.
Yeah.
No, we would actually go eat pizza and sandwiches after practice.
We all do
harm us.
We all do it. Let's go to Vito's right after the practice is over because we knew the guys would be there.
It is interesting.
We liked Anthony though. I liked Anthony.
You liked him.
I did. I liked Anthony. As the more I got to know him too over the years, we became more friends.
Yes.
After our playing careers,
Yeah.
where he's still a fucking devil when he was in that locker room. I know with that pen and stuff, he was out there to get people.
That's right.
But him, no, I'm only joking.
No.
And I say pardon the language. I am pardon the language because our kids.
Oh,
watch it.
stop.
No, I'm going to say that. But what I will say is that, and Chuck Gormley was the other guy I really liked.
Yeah.
And I thought he had a lot of integrity.
Yeah.
Was a good guy.
Andrew Foster checked in and said Tim Pinocchio, more like. Well, it's interesting, though, when you think about how things have changed over the years, and the influence of social media especially, too. I go back to a few years ago, Jake Voracek said, I don't remember if it was when he was here,
Mike Sealski, right?
or it was after. Well, there was that, right? He called Sealski a fucking weasel, which was, and then Sealski got upset, and there was a whole big thing. Sealski he got my number from you, I think, if I remember correctly, to then complain that I called him a liar because it was a misleading headline, it was a misleading story. Just don't write stuff like that. The columnist thing is an issue. The Inquirer, I think, has an actual problem where the columnists lob grenades into the locker room and then they leave the beat reporters to kind of clean up the mess. He did that once before. Marcus Hayes has done that a few times with the Sixers, most notably recently with Joel Embiid.
That was unbelievable.
You can't, there's that element to it. There's the way that those columns especially play on social media now. And then there's a social media piece. And the thing I was going to say was Voracek at one point said that sometimes younger guys on the Flyers team, I can't remember if it was in his last year here or when he moved out of this town, kind of implied that there were guys who would go on the bus and would look at social media. And a lot of people tried to connect dots that like a Nolan Patrick, a younger guy, was constantly checking his name or whatever on social. Funny because Voracek would do name searching of himself without being tagged and block people. But there are players who allow for social media to tear them down. And in your day, that wasn't really a variable to have to deal with.
Wasn't really a variable.
It was sports radio.
Yeah.
Sports radio
was all you had. Yeah.
You turn on 610 after a game, and it was merciless. Mm-hmm. Like, it didn't matter who the player was. You'd have Bob from Mount Airy.
Yeah.
That guy stinks.
Yeah, well,
he shouldn't be in the league. But what happened was, though, and I listened to it, because me and Hextall used to talk, and I'd listen to it. Mm-hmm. I would turn that on after a game, and I'm like, then finally I'm like, what am I listening to? These people never played. Then you realize, but it does get to the player.
Yeah.
Like, I remember my first, I made the all-rookie team, and I made a horrible mistake in my second year in the league. I made a one-time pass, and a guy went in and scored. It was just something, a learning experience where the coach said, hey, no one-time passes, same side. Mm-hmm. And it was the right idea, good read by the player. It was against Tampa when they were a weak team. And I remember after I had like the thing on it, some guy goes, Therien sucks, man. And you're like hearing it and you're thinking it's 10,000 people saying that, but it's one angry guy after a game that's dissecting one play.
But they don't have full access to you. And I guess that's the difference. Is you were able in a way, if you wanted to tune that out. You didn't have to listen to it. They weren't podcasting those episodes. Well, the clips weren't going around.
There was nothing. There's no videos of us or anything or hearing that stuff. But I'm telling you, the passion and the way that some of the hosts on those shows preyed on the athletes in this town, I think was absolutely pathetic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I listened to Angelo Cataldi, who I've been on a show with before. I used to fill in for Jonesy.
Yeah.
I mean, he would come in and read notes from the game. He never watched a sport. He had no idea what was going on with any sport, but he would sit there and he would trounce a guy and just pound on a guy like he was tied to that person. Mm-hmm. And I hated that. What Marcus Hayes did with Embiid, Embiid should not have done what he did. But there are certain reporters and writers that want to start something, and it's like they want to take a dig at you for no good reason. Yeah. When all they and I don't think they realize. I don't know, Anthony. Maybe you know. Is it a financial thing? Are they angry that guys are making so much money that and they don't see the same effort for what they're making? Marcus Hayes. I'm not turning this to Marcus Hayes. There's a lot of guys like that. But what's the issue? What is the issue?
I don't necessarily think it's an issue. I think when you're a columnist for a newspaper, your job is to offer opinion that maybe gets people talking, right? Yeah. And so you have to do it 3-4 times a week. Sometimes it's not always easy to come up with that hard-angled opinion that you're going to throw out there, kind of what we call a take today. Right? Everybody's got a take, right?
Right.
It's kind of a take. It was the old version of the takes. And throwing that out there. That wasn't always negative, obviously, but sometimes they were positive. But a lot of times there was a lot of negativity, and you had to figure out a way to wordsmith it in such a way that, gets people talking. That was because they wanted people to buy your newspaper to read that opinion. That was the whole premise of it. Because there wasn't an internet to go to. There weren't bazillion websites to get your information. It wasn't social media to get your information. You turned on the radio, or you picked up the newspaper and you read the columnists.
Yeah.
Because beat reporters, I was never I wrote in columns, but I was never a columnist. We were just covering the team. So we were writing stories we were reporting news. We weren't offering opinion. We weren't editorializing. But the columnists, that's what they get paid to do. And so therefore they would have some sort of opinion and put it out there, and half the people would agree with it and half the people would disagree with it. That meant they were doing their job right. Obviously it would piss off some players sometimes because it was negative, and I can understand that. But at the same time, that's what their job was.
Yeah, I understand that. No, and I understand the take. The problem is when you get the take really wrong.
Oh yeah.
And then what'll happen is, and that's how you create the chaos in between the player and the media. So I think that's part of the issue of that I was talking about. I just want guys to be fair.
Yeah.
Just in the media, because one thing I do when I come in, we talk about players, but I also, and this sounds kind of funny, I also realize that maybe there's a kid's parents watching too. Mm-hmm. You know, the guy is in the NHL. Now, whether he had a rough game, I always say the guy had a rough game. He's not a bad player per se.
Right. Well, you're not a bad player if you've made it to the NHL.
You're not.
I mean, there's only what? I mean, there's
only 700 or 800 jobs, right?
Right, and they have one of them in the world. So they're really, really good players.
Yeah. Okay,
they just may not be good enough for your liking at that level, but they're still one of the 700 best players in the world.
Correct.
Okay. It's kind of good that we're talking about this because there was an interesting thing, and it's kind of maybe we could kind of transition this
before you
a little bit.
Can you do me a favor, Max? Can you go tight on Ant really quick? And I want you to turn around. Can you just touch something on the shelf? Because we have had a fake news accusation here. That the backdrop behind you is not real.
There we go.
And so I just want to make sure.
Pull up my book.
Well, I was going to say over here, like I
got the pucks.
Oh, there. He moved the pucks.
I'd rather you publicize the book.
We have the book here. Of course, this holiday season.
Just in case anybody's wondering, we have a book right here that may be a good purchase for some of your friends and family. It's called Road to Redemption. It's a journey into a recovery story, particularly mine. Not publicizing, but just in case.
And now we're going to turn back around, and Russ is going to reach into the non-existent dimension, apparently. But no, everything here is real.
Well, anyway, what I think is a good transition here. I don't know if you guys saw it. And, I know we were going to talk about the Four Nations tournament at some point today, and the Flyers having 3 players who made the Four Nations tournament. But I don't know if you saw, there was somebody who criticized the selection of Travis Sanheim to Team Canada. And Joel Farabee responded on social media.
I did not see that.
I was one.
Are you sure?
Instagram, I want to say it was on. I'm not sure if it was Instagram or X, but I think it was Instagram where he responded and simply put, "Watch a game." That's all he wrote.
Yeah, it was.
It was okay.
It was on Twitter.
Was it on Twitter? Okay,
yeah.
Or X, whatever.
Yeah.
So he responded, "Watch a game." So there you go. If anybody thinks the players that people say, "Oh, the players don't pay attention to social media and everything," they darn well pay attention.
I never would. I'll be honest with you. One thing I do know, if I were a player today, I would have a ghosted Twitter name just to go read articles. Mm-hmm. I would never, ever, ever put myself on Twitter. I didn't care if I was Wayne Gretzky or if I was just myself.
I'm going to actually throw that up here on the screen real quick so people can see it.
There it is.
Somebody on Twitter at JFreshHockey said the one pick for Canada that does actually kind of confuse me is Sanheim. He's a good player and he's having a good year. Playing a lot of minutes, but I wouldn't consider him an amazing defender. He's not that physical, etc. What I'm missing, what am I missing other than not a lot of great left D options? And Farabee replied, "Watch a game."
Yeah. So
I actually don't mind the players clapping back. I think that the thing here's the problem though, right? A lot of fans like to talk a big game. Some do it with not their image in their profile picture, in their avatar, right? And they hide behind something. They hide behind a player. Like they have a fan account, and they throw this stuff out there, and then they don't react well when they're pushed back on by somebody who is either a writer, media, or in this case, a player. Well, then they freak out. Like, oh, how dare you?
Let me throw something at you.
Go ahead.
Jay Fresh, the guy who put that tweet out, isn't just an everyday fan. I mean, they are a fan, fan of the sport, but he's one of the hockey analytics types.
I've never heard of Jay Fresh.
Who puts out a lot of analytics types information.
Oh, so now you're trying to spark a debate.
I'm just saying, why does Farabee say watch a game? That's the reason he's putting that comment that way.
Interesting.
As opposed to don't just look at numbers because that's how you're analyzing this.
This person has 123,000 followers.
Yes.
I've never heard of this person.
Yes. That's what I'm trying to say to you.
You know what? I don't even know how you get to a number like that. I have a theory that...
Well,
I have a theory that if you're like a diehard Flyer writer, I think you can get to 40,000, and I think that's the actual number. I'm at Bill Meltzer. I've watched them for years, and Jason, we're all around 37,500.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the hardest of hardcore Flyer fans. Anthony, you got to be close to that number.
I'm not that high. I'm about 25,000.
But it's in that
But
realm.
I mean, this until Snow the Goalie got to where it is. I've only written for a suburban newspaper and a blog. Right. So I think 25,000 is a pretty good number considering that.
I'm actually testing the theory right now. So Dave Isaac, who was long viewed as a respected guy on the beat, has about 20,000. Charlie O'Connor from over at PHLY Flyers has just under 31,000. Meltzer.
37?
Yeah, let's see.
But he had hockey buzz.
Oh, that is true.
He was national.
But he's just under 30,000. So I think there's probably some truth to that.
Yeah, no,
the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand too, like this is the one that's really wild to look at. If you look at radio hosts, I don't know how we've gotten off on this. We have gone very far off of what we plan to talk about on the show today.
We'll wrap it up. We'll go to the Four Nations in a
minute.
All right.
But when we talk about like radio hosts and people who are on TV, their followings, I mean, like there are a few people I can think of in the city right now who have prime real estate on one of the two big stations and have like 2,000 followers. And then you kind of go like, all right, what's the correlation? Like, does radio have as big of an impact as it used to? And I would argue that
I haven't
probably,
listened to sports
probably
radio.
not.
No.
And I would say 20 years. I have not listened to sports radio except when there's a Flyer game and they're on the road and I have to, tune in.
I sometimes have it on in the car. Sometimes, but not always. Like I usually listen to music when I'm in the car.
Yeah, me too.
But every once in a while, if I'm like, I'm tired of listening to the same music, I'll just say, let's see what they're talking about on talk radio. That's it. I don't listen. I never listen at home. I don't listen to it at home.
I don't know. We're having Max. We gotta figure out this remote thing over here. This is part of our maybe hit like the back button over.
We have to agree to terms and conditions.
We'll just stick on whatever this is for now. We'll just stick on the tight angle. Let's get into a little bit of hockey, un poco, because we might end up expanding on this. Oh boy, we might end up expanding on this during the press row show today. But the Four Nations Cup is something that has driven a lot of controversy. We just kind of touched on what happened with Sanheim's selection. To me, it seems kind of strange and almost oddly exclusive for it to be limited to Four Nations. I don't understand it. There are notable omissions. Can somebody please explain to me?
I will start first.
Because why are there only four countries?
I don't want you to get in trouble, so I'll say it first.
I don't remember there only being four countries that like hockey or have good hockey.
I'll say it first.
Okay.
Part of this is a very political decision.
Oh.
Right? I mean, they kept Russia out for
geopolitical for sure.
For a reason. Okay? It's very geopolitical. So that was the reason that they kind of created this, was like, we're going to have this great hockey tournament amongst the best hockey nations in the world, but we're not going to include Russia. Yeah. That was really the genesis of this, okay? But the reality of it is that, there's a little bit of cringe to it because there's no question these are 4 of the 5 best nations in the world in hockey. There's no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean Czechia or Slovakia or Switzerland
or Germany
can't pull an upset. They've done it in the past. Yeah. So if you're going to have a hockey tournament and shut down your league for 2 weeks to have that tournament, why? Why are you doing it with just 4 teams? Oh. It just seems like a glorious, like a glorified all-star game is kind of what it seems like to me. It's extended out to play 3 or 4 games per team.
It is a meaningless exhibition of pointless hockey.
Yes, and players are going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt in this.
I don't want to derail this, but we did just have breaking news. This is the beauty of doing live.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the breaking really quick?
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Luke Richardson just let go by Chicago.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that's a shame. I mean, what's really weird? I'll make a point before we go back to the Four Nations. Chicago actually thought they were supposed to be improving.
They were awful.
They were horrendous when they were here. So congratulations to them for getting rid of a great guy, probably an excellent coach. That was dumb. Like I get, what it is though. Bedard's not performing.
Yeah,
and that someone's got to be on the hook. It's like Montgomery, right, for Boston.
Yeah,
their coach. Why did he get fired? Because it didn't work in their eyes.
Luke will get another job.
Oh, right away.
Yeah, he'll get somewhere. And I just want to go back to this, and this is a good point by Zach Anderson, but I want to just address this. It is also an NHLPA event, which is why.
Oh, this is going back to Four Nations.
Yeah, which is why they are only including those 4 countries, because how are you fielding a team of just NHL players with those other countries? Right. So that understandable, but it didn't have to be. Yeah. You could have still gotten the buy-in from the NHLPA to have their players participate in it, even with players that aren't in the NHLPA. They would have still bought in. Like, it didn't have to just be NHLPA players.
If you're going to shut your league down, and when you look at the NHL schedule and the Flyers, just the Flyers in particular, the emptiness of that schedule in February makes me sick to my stomach.
It's crazy.
Like, it does. It's crazy. You have got to do better as a group than the prize for this being an attaboy.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be like the Olympics. You want to go over and win the gold medal, there's something to play for. But you win this, you get an attaboy. Good job, boys. And you come home, maybe injured, bring your team out of sync.
Yeah.
You haven't rested, right? Everyone else has. They're all gone on vacation. Let's say the Flyers have won 7 in a row, which they did before. Remember before the pandemic?
Yep.
Whenever they were playing great, like they lost to maybe Boston or something.
Right, the last game.
Yep. But what kind of a message is that to your actual team? To me, this is about the Philadelphia Flyers. All right, I'm not in this to go play for Team Canada in a Four Nations Cup or team if I'm on the ice.
Yeah.
My focus is out here to try to make my team here the best possible team I can and to contribute however I might be able to do it. I hate this tournament. I think it's stupid. I think it's another dumb NHL money grab. And I tell you what, until someone steps up and starts parroting what other people are saying, this shit's going to continue.
Rob Ski just gave us the best transition because it was another thing that we wanted to get to. Rob Ski, bless your heart. This Four Nations thing is as dumb as the golden at-bat rule in MLB being proposed.
We went crazy yesterday. Me and Anthony went crazy. I saw this tweet. I'm going to hand it to him right now. I saw this, and I thought to myself, does the commissioner hate his own sport?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Comes down now to the actual heads of your sports hating your sport.
You guys know I'm a baseball guy, right?
Yes, me too.
Big time.
Purist.
Right. Well, yeah, but I'm saying not just as a purist, but I watch more baseball than I do hockey. I go to 75 games a year to cover the Phillies. I come home from those games and I watch the West Coast games. I have the MLB package. I'm a baseball guy through and through. I will stop watching the sport.
Yep.
I am saying this to you now.
I won't watch
I
it.
will stop watching the sport if they let this ridiculous, stupid idea come into the game. You do not realize how much you are damaging by just saying we want the star player to bat whenever.
What about when the star player strikes out 4 out of 5 times? He'll get vilified by the hometown like it's nobody.
100%, buddy, and that's my biggest argument is that we want the star players to come up. The best players in the sport of baseball, best hitters in baseball, get on base or get a hit 3 times out of 10.
30%.
Okay? 70% of the time, they make an out. So what are the odds that they're going to come up in these big spots and produce? More often than not, it's only going to make it worse for the star players. They're going to be run out of town because they can't produce in this key spot every time. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's stupid.
There's only been one guy in the last 20 years that I literally, in a playoffs, in a World Series, they could not get him out. It was Big Pappy. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Every time he was at bat, he was hitting something.
Yeah.
That was one time.
Yeah.
Imagine putting Bryce Harper to bat, the golden bat, every single time, and he strikes out 4 out of 5 times, and the other hits a long fly ball. Yep. 1 out of 15, 20, 30 times he hits a home run.
Yeah.
The other times it's set up for failure.
Right, and that's another
Ed
thing.
Coleman asks here, what is the golden at-bat rule? So and we need to get back to hockey because there's a Michkov point to make. But that's okay.
We're talking sports.
But we're jumping all around. Ed Coleman asks, what is the golden at-bat? So the concept is that one time per game, regardless of the inning, regardless of the situation, a team would be able to send whatever hitter they want up to bat. So in theory, if you're in the midst of like you're in a 4-run deficit, Bryce Harper leads off the inning with a solo shot, and then he probably isn't going to come back around. Bases are loaded, chance to win the game. You can then bring up Bryce Harper. You can jump a few spots in the lineup, come up and take the at-bat with bases loaded. That's what they want to do. And the funny thing is, we were talking about this before, Stugatz over on the Dan Le Batard show proposed this on their show years ago when Rob Manfred, who was on the phone at the time, and Manfred said, "You're wasting my time with that." And here we are a few years later, and Manfred said that there's buzz around.
He brought it up on his own. It wasn't like someone asked him about it.
Okay, hypothetically. No, there's not even like something that you could try to say would be the hockey equivalent. There's not.
It's a shootout. It's a
shootout.
shootout.
The TJ Oshie rule, right? Like if you could just keep sending.
Well, that's exactly what it is. But it's the same thing as picking your shootout shooters. Because when you're picking your shootout shooters, you're picking your best offensive players based on what you think in that night.
Right.
So I guess would the comp then be that your first, like one of your first,
the same guy could just go all 3 times,
or could be the
same guy just keeps going.
Get 2 opportunities, like if it goes to the sudden death, that he can come back in. I don't know.
I guess that's
it. Just feels weird. It kind of feels gross. I'll tell you though, if the Flyers had the ability to put somebody back in time and time again, especially in overtime, it'd be Matvei Michkov. Now you, my friend over at onpattison.com, wrote a wonderful story, and I actually had the opportunity to read it.
You read it?
I almost never have time.
I'm like going to collapse.
It takes a long time to get through yourself. It's a lot of words. It's a lot of words.
It was the Sunday long read is what it was.
It was a lot of words. But there was a beautiful stat in it. And our wonderful intern, Andrew, now I don't know if he was the one who found the stat. He tweeted it out. You embedded it in the story.
No, but he tweeted it out, but that was because I told him to,
okay,
so that I could embed it in the story. But he brought it up on the Press Row show.
You're right. That was his stat of the night.
Like 3 days prior or 4 days prior. So he brought it up beforehand. So that's why I gave him credit.
So Matvei Michkov scored his 3rd overtime goal of the season over the weekend. He joins only 3 other players in the entire history of the NHL to do that as a teenager. Sidney Crosby, Ilya Kovalchuk, and Rick Nash. And the wild thing is, and I think there are a few different factors that go into it. Michkov did it in 23 games. It took Crosby 69 games, it took Kovalchuk 100 games, and it took Rick Nash 119 games.
Well,
they didn't have the 3 on.
They didn't have 3 on 3. That's why it's faster.
That's a big part. And do we maybe look at it as how were those teams at the time, like their respective rookie years? How many times did Crosby's Penguins team force overtime? So maybe that's why it's a little bit skewed. But still, when given the opportunity, 3 overtime winners in 23 games is something that you can't.
And I will say this:
really overrate. That's clutch.
The Flyers this year have gone to overtime at a ridiculous rate.
Yeah, crazy.
Like 10 out of 25 games, I think it is, right? Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of overtime games. Whereas,
did I see 32 extra minutes already?
Yeah, it's something crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, Crosby, when he was a rookie, that was they had the.
I played against him.
They had the shootout there, right?
Crosby. Against Crosby, his rookie year,
yeah. So I mean, Kovalchuk, that was before Crosby, right?
Yeah.
And Nash was after Crosby. So I would say Kovalchuk probably had the fewest opportunities.
You want to stat with those 3 guys?
Yeah.
Love it.
What do all 3 of them have in common? Not Michkov, those 3.
Crosby, Nash, and Kovalchuk?
It's a great stat of the night. Or your trivia from our actual show.
Was it about how many goals they ended up in their career?
No. All 3 of them. It has to do with the draft.
I don't know.
First overall?
All 3 of them were first overall picks.
Okay.
Yeah. All 3 of them were first overall.
Well, in fairness, we always talk about this. There was the geopolitical situation was kind of what it was.
Yeah, we're going with the Michkov. Would have been the first pick overall.
Well, he might have been.
He might have been the number 2 overall
Number
pick in
2,
that draft
right.
behind Bedard had it not been for the contract with the KHL and all that. So he's almost like a deceptive number 7. I think that, listen, if he ends up becoming the player that a lot of people expect him to become, I think that there is going to be that conversation, right? Like we will have that conversation, and down the line, it'll be a qualifier. He was a number 7, but he wasn't a true number 7 pick. Geopolitical factors might have played into that. But anyway, it's still, that is a clutch player. What?
Zach Anderson, Bundy hooked each one of them at some point in his career.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely. You know what? I will say this. People sometimes will actually group me in as one of those slugs from the 80s.
Yeah.
But my greatest asset was my skating.
Yeah.
I was a great skater.
Yeah.
I didn't get a ton of penalties for hooking and holding and stuff. I mean, it was allowed. You could bear hug a guy in the corner.
Yeah.
But I love when some guy does throw me in with the old, Craig Ludwig was a great defender, but he couldn't move.
Right.
And he was a true, standstill type of defenseman that would get the job done.
Yeah, you guys were allowed to hold everybody.
Everybody. You could get in the corner and just kind of put your glove in between.
I mean, even grab them as they're skating through the neutral zone.
Yeah, and then you go hold up for your partner while he went and got the puck.
Yeah.
That's actually something when you talk to a lot of guys that they say they'd like to have back.
Yeah.
Really? The defenseman pinching for his defenseman, holding up a guy because you get run through the boards.
Yeah.
Whenever that happens, but which is few and far between.
Now, I will just throw this out here real quick because James Bond Flyers just asked this, but is this a new pregame show format? No. This is one of the times we've been working on, and I think we're eventually going to be able to figure out a time that we're going to try to make the show weekly
at the same time. Yeah.
Because it's been the one issue with this show. We continue to grow it, and we love the people who follow us wherever we go. We truly appreciate it. But like there is something to be said for having a routine schedule that you can kind of plan around. We are working on that, and a big part of that is coming down and doing this around game days or somewhere close to it. We will figure it out. But this is just us trying to make sure that we're kind of upholding our end of the bargain for all the listeners out there who enjoy the Press Row Show but want to have these deeper dives and not as much of the stuff.
And I would say, too, with the actual show like this, we talk hockey, but we do kind of go all around the social experiment of sport as well and how it ties to hockey and different things going on. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, and we will continue always on the Press Row Show talking about the game at hand and what's going on. But I do think that this is kind of a podcast that could go and talk about sports in general and how it correlates to the sport of hockey.
Yeah.
And the NHL in particular.
Yeah. I agree. I think that you nailed it, Bundy. I think that what we do with the Press Row Show is 95% tied into the game that we're attending.
Correct.
Whereas the podcast for Snow the Goalie is a more high-level view of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, with all of that in mind, we are going to take a very short break from this show to then get ready for the Press Row Show.
Yeah, we only have an hour.
We're going to go live at 6:30.
I'm taking the boys to dinner tonight.
Oh.
So we're going to be back at 6:30 on the Snow the Goalie YouTube channel. Now, for all the people who aren't watching live or aren't listening live, you're going to say, all right, well, what does that matter? We're just updating all the people who are live here. So 6:30, Press Row Show. And then we have, it's funny, we looked at it, the entire Flyers schedule for the month of December, there are only, I think, 6 home games or 5 home games. It's not many. January, there are a few more. February, it dies off. And then March is insanity, pure insanity.
March is ridiculous.
So we're going to be figuring out like where we're going to pigeonhole this show into, making sure that it's consistent. But we hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that you enjoyed
like our new studio.
The new digs, the Snow the Goalie Studio. We're going to continue. We're going to find some more stuff. We're going to add here.
I have a nice, beautiful Snow the Goalie plaque.
There we go.
I'll be bringing that in. We're going to fill these shelves. So, and I'll tell you what, if anybody has anything that you'd like to add to our shelves, bring it to a game some night. We'll stick it right in here. And every time you see it, you'll be memorialized on new shelves.
There you go.
I love it.
I love it.
All right. So thank you so much to everybody who tuned in live. Thank you to all of you who listen in the podcast feed. If you haven't already done so, you can subscribe to the Snow the Goalie channel on YouTube. And, of course, you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. For Ant, for Bundy, I'm Russ. Thank you for tuning in to Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast. We will talk to all of you later tonight on the Press Row Show. And then, of course, here on the Only Flyers podcast. Talk to all of you very,